guys, before we jump in, this episode is brought to you by the Transportation Intermediaries Association, the only trade association exclusively representing the 3PL industry. We talk about risk management every single week on this show. Chameleon carriers, strategic theft, brokers are under a microscope like never before. This is why you need the TIA in your corner. The TIA isn't just about networking. They provide a powerful voice in Washington, the best legal frameworks in the business, and a community that holds the line on ethics and excellence, not to mention valuable certifications. They do the work so you can scale securely and with confidence. The Transportation Intermediaries Association, connecting freight, powering the supply chain. Don't operate on an island. Join the elite. Go to tianet.org and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agent success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do and who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I got a very special guest for you guys here today. We're going to be breaking down a lot of current legislation out there on Capitol Hill, why your voice matters, and what I think is the real kind of cost of silence out there. And, you know, it's easy to point about what's wrong, but like, what can we do to advocate? What can we do on Capitol Hill for this industry in particular? Because at the end of the day, you guys, a lot of the changes and a lot of the things that come down that we want to see, it's got to come from us, right? Like, we don't want people who aren't in the industry making decisions for us. So we got to make our voices heard out there. And there's no better person to talk about this than my good friend, Chris Burroughs with the TIA. So Chris, thank you so much for jumping on here today.
Absolutely, Chris. Always a pleasure to see you, sir.
Oh, man, dude, it's good to see you. And, you know, I think your experience at the TIA now is more important than ever. I mean, because you were on the government affairs for quite some time.
Yep.
And, you know, so kind of just like leading in with it, man, there's with that new infrastructure, the Build America 250 Act that came out here, and it's really starting to progress. What from your perspective, in your experience on the government affairs stuff, what were some of those like non-negotiable things that you guys wanted to see in that bill?
Yeah. So last week, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which fun fact was actually my first job out of college, was working for the T&I committee. So near and dear to my heart what they're doing on Capitol Hill there. But yeah, so they marked up, which since is kind of their approval process, they call it a markup at the committee level of this year's highway reauthorization bill. So this is the multi-year, typically piece of funding legislation that not only funds the federal agencies, but there's also a lot of provisions and kind of legislative stuff in there as well. So some of the things we really push for, obviously cargo theft has been on the top of everyone's mind for a number of years. We've been pushing specifically for a piece of legislation called the Household Goods Protection Act. It covers general freight as well, not just household goods. Names can be deceiving on Capitol Hill, as we talked about before. But we pushed for that to be included. It was. We pushed for other things like addressing chameleon carriers, addressing some of the legal dispatch services that are going on, setting up a freight advisory committee to look at this issue of cargo theft and making sure brokers have a seat at that table. In addition to going back to kind of the same piece of legislation, but from 2012, which is the legislation called MAP 21, Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century. There was a provision in there dealing with broker qualification and experience requirements to get into the industry, which is something they still haven't implemented at FMCSA. So we put language in there was kind of like, hey, FMCSA, we really meant this back in 2012. It's time to get act on this, and putting a time requirement of, hey, you've got a year to get this done for the public.
So I had Kenneth Riddle on with the FMCSA last week, and we were talking about their new MOTUS registration. From your standpoint and kind of seeing that roll out, how does that really help address the chameleon carrier stuff? And and like what are the because it's like, I love having people from the federal government come on the show, but like they're very careful about like kind of like what they can and cannot say in explaining that. So it's like when we're looking at the chameleon carriers in MOTUS, how does that actually like put a hard stop to really allowing any of that stuff to continue?
Yeah, MOTUS is a huge step. I know it's kind of their phase 2, and Ken's a great guy, but I've been a friend for a number of years, and actually is my neighbor, outside of DC in Virginia. But like I said, it's really phase 2 of kind of their modernization to address kind of the fraud and identity theft kind of on the front end. So we talked about, when I was on your show last time, I think we talked about how agency has brought in IDEMIA about a year ago, to do kind of the background screening for new entrants. So MOTUS is, like I said, phase 2, where they're really going to start cracking down further and try to get some of these fraudulent chameleon companies, entities out of the marketplace altogether. There's provisions in there that date back to MAP 21 as well, in terms of the unique identifier. So with authority you're working with when you're doing business. So attaching that B, for instance, for broker on the authority number is a big deal. And really just updating their system. It's so long overdue, and I'm sure Ken mentioned this, that they were literally duct taping this program together for the past 20 years. It's so outdated. They had very limited capabilities what they could do. I remember a conversation I had with them probably 10 years ago, and what we were seeing was reissuing of older MC numbers, which as is very, companies want that. Which often led to a lot of companies being purchased. They want to buy the old numbers, or they've been in business for a long time. So they started reissuing all these old MC numbers again. We're kind of like, hey, what are you doing? Why don't you just add another digit? And they're like, our system literally can't add another digit. Like, it's not built into the program. Like, we've hit our max capacity. So we have to go back to the original numbers because we have no choice. So again, it's really addressing getting the companies, because if we can stop it if the agency can stop it on the beginning, and these companies don't even get authority to begin with, that will certainly help. Again, nothing's a silver bullet in terms of the cargo theft. There's still going to be smart folks. They're still going to find ways around it, but that'll help a ton.
So what is there? Is there like a phase 3 aspect of this where they're really going to start gutting the existing providers that are out there? Because that was kind of the general sentiment that I got is like, hey, this is great for the new entrants and from anybody getting in, but like, what about the people who are behind, like who are already out there and operating? Is that kind of on the horizon? I know it takes a long time to kind of roll a lot of this stuff out.
Yeah, that's kind of phase 3, to your point, where they're going to really start checking those folks. I think there's going to be a massive purge of just companies who are not active, because they're obviously not going to go in and they're not going to update their system, make sure their profile's up to date, make that change over to MOTUS from the current legacy system. So you're going to see a massive purge of companies from there that, quite frankly, probably haven't been in business for a while. Then they're going to just start doing the background checks on folks through biannual updates that, hey, you are who you say you are, and you're a legitimate business. Eventually, they don't have a timetable as well, but I think since the 90s they've been talking about getting rid of MC numbers and freight forwarder numbers and just shifting strictly everything to a DOT number with that identifier at the end. We're not sure that they don't have a timetable when that's going to happen either, but I know that's probably phase 3, phase 4 down the line.
For me, when we're talking about dispatch services, I think you and I have talked about this almost every single time you've been on this show, Chris. And I think that is one of the main, I don't want to call it the main driver of fraud, double brokering, and everything else that comes along with it. But I know personally the experience I've had when dispatch services have called in to try and book our freight. And it's always try this MC, try that MC. Like they're not held to any standards at all. And it's like, at what point, and is this something you guys are working on here, is to get where it's like, hey, if you're involved in the freight transaction at all, you have to be registered with the FMCSA and you have to be held to a certain standard out there, because otherwise I feel like they're just going to transfer to the next iteration on how they're going to get access to the freight to where they can hide behind the scenes.
Yeah. And this is something we've been working on for a number of years and really tried to elevate in the halls of Congress. And there's a part of Delilah's law that talks about dispatch services, and you've got to have a presence in the United States. Because as you know, Chris, a lot of these dispatch services are not based in the U.S. Mm-hmm. They're overseas. And we have countless stories from our members as well of, that they've been kind of caught in one of these fraudulent schemes, and they're like, hey, call the FMCSA. We don't care. We got 100 other authorities that we'll just reincarnate under. Mm-hmm. We've got, all these different numbers. You get this one shut down, we're fine. We got 99 more. And we'll just keep doing this rinse and repeat. So it's a massive problem. I understand there are some jurisdictional problems with it. Obviously, with them being overseas, that just creates an extra layer of difficulty in terms of tracking them down. But yeah, I mean, if you're arranging transportation, the most simple definition of a broker, arranging transportation for compensation, you should be a licensed broker. Mm-hmm. And that we're not doing that for selfish reasons at TA. We're doing that to better the industry. Yeah. And like you said, there's no jurisdiction, there's no regulatory environment that these folks fall under. There's no bond or trust fund for the carriers to go after if there's a non-performance issue or non-payment. So it's a massive problem. It continues to be one, and it's finally gaining some steam and moving through the process.
No, because I just look at it. It's always easy to point the finger in a different direction. And, when it comes to whether it's a dispatch service or, I know there's people out there that essentially represent trucking companies and then make introductions to shippers and take a cut on that. They don't want to call themselves a broker, but they're being a broker at that point, right? And it's easy to sit there and point and blame brokers for all of this stuff when there's so many other unvetted parties out there. And, from my standpoint, I'm never going to sit here and say brokers are clean hands across the board, right? Like, I think there's bad actors on all sides of the industry that is out there. And from my standpoint, as somebody who's trying to build their business, I want any and all loopholes closed, Chris. Like, I believe in a meritocracy, right? Like, the best man wins, best woman wins out there. Whoever builds the best company, who does the right thing, they will be rewarded for that. I hate the loopholes where people can come in and operate in a way. And it's like, it's easy to go out there and bid on freight when you don't have to worry about turning a profit because you don't pay anybody, right? Like, it's very easy to go out there and operate like that. And that's what a lot of these things do. And, people are going and they're essentially draining any and all opportunities for the legitimate providers that are out there. And that includes fleets. I had Jim Mullen from the TCA on yesterday, and we were talking about this, right? Like, I just want the right companies to be elevated. I hate criminals across the board. I don't want them to have any access to the United States transportation system in any capacity. I want standards up there to where, and this has to come from Capitol Hill, I think, at this point, where all of these things have to be closed down to keep people in business, because otherwise you're going to drive the legitimate providers away. And then that's a world where nobody wants to see.
Sure. No, we couldn't agree more. And like you said, it's on both sides. When we talk about chameleon carriers, there are a ton of chameleon brokers out there too. We need to elevate the brokerage industry just as much as we need to elevate the carrier side. There's bad actors on both sides of the equation, and we got to clean it up for everybody.
Yeah. No, I agree. But I think it takes with everything that's been coming down here, I took a while to really talk about what came down with the Supreme Court ruling with Montgomery and Caribe. I don't need to be the first person to go out there. I'm not a legal expert. I actually like to talk to attorneys behind the scenes and be like, hey, what does this actually mean? And, a lot of these things that I see coming down, I think it really fundamentally changes a lot for a lot of parties. I know there's, certain groups out there on the driver's side who are celebrating this, like they think that this is going to be the death of the freight broker that's out there. I know there's people on the freight broker side of things who are seemingly like, oh, just document some stuff and you're going to be okay. I think people need to be very, very cautious now about kind of how this transaction is going. I remember when I first got in the industry, their big, when I was trained up, their big thing is do not give directions to drivers under any circumstances, because there was another case that just came down where a broker gave directions. Driver went down a wrong way street and hit and killed somebody. The broker was found liable in that moment. How are we preparing now moving forward? Because it's been very well publicized what happened. How can we prepare as an industry moving forward now as a broker to really kind of protect our businesses here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been trying to be a kind of a voice of reason, really from the onset when we initially put our statement out as an association, because there's a lot of noise out there. Like, I do my best to stay off social media. My staff tells me don't go on social media at all. But it's hard not to. We digest so much for news and information from social media now. But yeah, I mean, from our take of it, this obviously we were disappointed in the Supreme Court decision, obviously, because it really puts our guys in a tough spot in terms of safety. Because this is why, in our opinion, F4A was created, was to eliminate this patchwork. You can't predict what the crash or the safety standard would be when there's involving a truck crash in a particular district or particular state or particular county or whatever the case may be. That's why there was federal preemption. Obviously, the Supreme Court, saw that in terms of a safety profile of a broker, this was not included in that. But the thing to remember, Chris, is that I think it's 31 states have already adopted that. Mm-hmm. That they said that, hey, you can't, the F4A preemption is not a viable defense. And then I believe 31 states. So it's over half the states. So the rest of the country now kind of falls in line with that. But that doesn't mean, there's a lot of posts out there that, now brokers can be sued. Well, the reality is that they've been sued since, the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. In terms of negligent selection cases, which this case was about, the Schramm decision was from 2004. Mm-hmm. We've got a liability paper that we put together in 2006 or 7, I believe, kind of helping our members navigate kind of the between a rock and a hard place in terms of the liability theories of negligent selection and vicarious liability we talked about in terms of exerting too much control in the routing. So this is nothing new. Like, brokers have been sued. They're going to continue to be sued. I think there are some, there's going to be some correction, maybe some overcorrections, but I don't use that term negatively, overcorrection. Yeah. But there's going to be, some overcorrection on the carrier vetting side. And I think insurance prices are obviously insurance rates are going to increase. What that looks like, we're not sure yet. I'm not sure the insurance folks know yet either. I think because of the overcorrection, some of the small owner operators, some of the small fleets could potentially be hurt by this for sure. Mm-hmm. And from a shipper's perspective, and they kind of got talked about too in the oral arguments of could shippers be held as targets for this as well? And consensus is yes. But what do they do with their business? Obviously, do they push more to the brokerage side is for protection, for liability risk management, which is what our guys mostly do. Yeah. So it's interesting. There was a recent case involving Home Depot that the Texas Supreme Court looked at and found that Home Depot wasn't liable. There was I got the line right here. Home Depot's only connection to the fatal accident is a passive shipper of unremarkable goods being transported by a federal regulated motor carrier. Mm-hmm. So, you're going to see this throughout the country, multiple different areas. This is not if there's a truck crash, a broker's not immediately going to be liable. It's still got to go through the appropriate channels. There's still going to be defenses available. If they are negligent, then, it's going to be easier. Settlements probably go up too, in addition to insurance. Settlements are going to have to rise probably. Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot going on. I don't think a lot of it is, a lot of the initial takes were kind of chicken little. This is the end of the world. This is the end of the brokerage industry. We don't see it that way. And I know a lot of people don't as well.
Yeah, no, I don't either. Like I always wanted to take some time to kind of digress and really process a lot of this information, because it's easy to get emotional about a lot of this stuff. And, but I look at it from a risk standpoint alone. And I've mentioned this on the show. And when I talked about this on last Friday, and I really broke all of this down from a risk mitigation standpoint, I could see shippers transitioning more towards brokers and fleets of a certain size. Now, again, I always like to say, I could be wrong, but if I'm looking at it from a business and now they're looking at some of these judgments that's came down here recently. I mean, we're talking 10, 15, 50, $100 million settlements that are being litigated. That even a $10 million settlement bankrupts probably 99% of the businesses in the United States at any given moment. So I look at it where I could see shippers now being like, hey, we're done working with carriers of a certain size. We're going to go to a broker, or we're going to completely redo this entire contract with our operators to where we're absolving ourselves from any and all liability. I could see that being a reality here in the near future. But another thing I've been thinking about a lot here is how many cases are now going to be brought back on appeal after this ruling, and then if those are TIA members, for example, how can we lean on the TIA for any form of, guidance or assistance during this time?
Yeah, I think we've already seen that. There was a case recently that was brought back.
Literally echo, like the next day.
It was like the next day, yeah. So yeah, I think you're going to see more and more of that. One thing that we started about a year and a half ago is we really put a lot of resources into our legal aspect of what we do at TIA. So we've got an amazing legal committee that's comprised of about 40 or 50 in-house general counsels at a variety of member companies and variety of sizes throughout TIA membership. And they're looking at all this stuff. TIA has gotten very active in terms of filing amicus briefs on behalf of our members throughout the country. So, we're being as active as we can from the legal side of things. And then, there's obviously a massive legislative side of things as well. We have been pushing for years for a federal standard. Unfortunately, that's been difficult to get through Congress. And I know one of our favorite topics to talk about offline is the dysfunction of Congress. It's only getting worse. But we're working hard to really push the agency and push the administration to put a federal standard out and like the Montgomery case, just to get that clarity. We still exist today in a system where 94% of trucking companies are unrated. Mm-hmm. And if you go before, if you were negligent or not, if you go before a jury and there's an unrated carrier, plaintiff's attorney doesn't have to make a huge leap to paint the picture that a carrier is unsafe, and that a broker should be held liable. So we've got to clean up. The FMCSA has got to do a job, and I think this FMCSA has done a phenomenal job of taking a lot of these folks off the highway. It's been excellent. So kudos to Administrator Bars and his team, and Secretary Duffy, all the way at the top of DOT. But they've got to get these safety ratings to carriers. We've got to change the way the process is done, and that will help a ton, because you can't live in an environment with 94% unrated.
And that's it, right? And that's another thing now where, again, like how this ruling fundamentally changes things, where even if you're a carrier, maybe you got 5 trucks, 10 trucks, whatever, and you have that direct shipper, they might be looking at that stuff now. They're like, dude, you don't even have a rating. We can't work with you now, right? There's a lot of exposure that has now kind of came about. And I'm not here to argue against, I'm not a lawyer, right? The Supreme Court's the Supreme Court. Like that is what it is. We got to find a way to make it work after the fact now. And, it's like, as a business owner myself, you got to deal with the punches here, and you got to find a way to make it work. And I think that there's going to come a point in time here where the opportunity is going to be for the brokerage community, especially the ones that are doing things the right way. And I'm not saying the right way as in I have a process in place, right? Because processes can be challenged. I look at it as the people who are out there who have an actual vetting process, like a vetting system that's in place, they can prove it. They're going to possibly stop working with carriers that do not have any safety ratings at all. I could only imagine the amount of people who have been combing through their setup carriers in their system now and have been deactivating all of them that don't. I think, at least the responsible ones, I'm sure, have been doing that. But, you were bringing up a point there, Chris, about like you guys have been advocating for a lot of things out there. And, you guys have your annual fly-in every single year in DC. And this is what this entire event is geared towards. Why is this year more important than years past? Not saying that any other years there hasn't been things, but like, why is this year the year that people need to be in DC, boots on the ground?
Yeah, I think not a marketing tactic, but I feel like, I've been here 15 years, and we feel like every year we say this is the most important, and we really mean it. And I think this year for sure is got to be, if not the most important, one of the most important years, just because of everything that's going on, in terms of establishing a federal standard, looking at this massive cargo theft problem, looking at the safety side of things of what's going on in the industry. There's just so much going on, which has been a good thing from a PR perspective and a media side of things, is that there's so much discussion and topic of transportation and supply chain and safety on our nation's highways. But there's just so much noise going on that it's so important for our membership to get up to Capitol Hill and tell our side of the story. Because like we've always said, if we're not up here telling our story, then somebody else is telling it for us, and we don't want to be able to tell our story. We want our association to tell the story of our members.
That is the most important thing right there. Like when you see political pundits on social media voicing their opinion, like I after the Supreme Court ruling, I saw a couple of headlines like, "Oh, brokers only employ illegals to drive for them," and I'm like, "Oh my God, it's like." To kind of tie all that in, like we have to tell our story, right? Because nobody knows this industry better than actual operators in this industry.
Yep.
And it's like, we need those frontline individuals, the ones who are actively brokering freight, running a brokerage, to go out there and advocate for us on Capitol Hill and have our voice be heard, because otherwise somebody's going to tell that story for us, or they're going to tell a watered down version that does not align with our core values. Because it's like, again, we talk about bad actors of all walks of every industry. This isn't just a transportation thing, right? There's people out there. When you're a member of the TIA, you carry yourself differently, right? Like there is a code of ethics, there is a standards that all of these members are adhered to. We should be the ones advocating for the brokerage industry on Capitol Hill. They need to hear from us directly. And you guys fight tirelessly on Capitol Hill to get this stuff done. What can we expect, though, for those individuals that are on the fence, Chris, where they're like, well, am I going to fly to DC and then I'm just going to have to sit there and talk to a staffer or anything like that? Or are there actual meetings with sitting members of Congress, the Transportation Committee, all of that take place?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we set up all the meetings directly for our members, which is, not something a lot, I don't know, I'll say a lot, but not something that most trade associations do. We kind of make it as seamless as possible for our members that come into Washington, D.C. And yeah, you'll sit down and you'll meet directly with members from your state, including your House member and your 2 senators. Sometimes those are staff meetings. Sometimes those are member meetings. I'd say, historically it's been kind of 50-50. Some years we get more members, some years we get more staff. But as a former staffer, we always tell our folks, like, it's important to meet with staff too, because, the congressman is, or congresswoman is on 3 or 4 different committees. They've got, a plethora of issues they're dealing with. They lean heavily on staff. And you see that more and more as the years go on. My old boss that I worked for in Capitol Hill has now passed away, but he was really in the weeds and everything. You didn't prepare remarks for him when you go into a committee hearing. He had everything kind of mapped out by himself, but then you see other members over there that literally have a piece of paper that they're reading verbatim that their staff wrote. So there's a wide variety of members as well. Some are good, some are really, some are not so good. But yeah, it's so important to come. I mean, as constituents, as their voters, you're essentially their boss. You're, the folks that are in the district or in the state are the ones that are electing these folks to office. They want to hear from you. They get excited to learn about, an industry that we think flies too much under the radar. And we're working on changing that. But yeah, I mean, but we need, when I started at TI 15 years ago, I think we had 20 people come to the fly-in. And we've had as many as 130 in recent years come. And we want to blow that out of the water this year and just get as many members as possible to Washington, D.C. to tell our story.
Yeah, no, it needs to happen. And I think, you're right. I'm sure every year there's something that we're like, hey, this is the most important year. But like, I've never seen this much of a spotlight on this industry in the entirety of probably my life, right? And I think that now more than ever, it is going to take us showing up and like we have to tell our story. We have to control the narrative out there, whether, it's fake news stories that are being put out there that I've seen. And, again, like I've been doing some media work for like, 6 years now. Some of these clips that I see out there, like I can tell they've been terribly edited, and these are by like mainstream media people, and they're clipped and they're pasted together, and it's like it's easy to sell a 15-second soundbite as the total story of what it is, and that's where we are as a society. Is people are they pay attention only as long as a TikTok clip or an Instagram reel or a YouTube short. That's where they get all of their information that is out there. So it's like, if we're going to control the narrative, we got to show up, right? Like we have to show up and make our voice be heard. But Chris, I appreciate your time, man. And, again, I'm going to continue to run my mouth about all of this stuff because it needs to, right? Like I take this stuff very seriously because this affects not just my livelihood. There's a lot of great people in this industry who are doing the right thing that need that protection out there. And so I'm just glad to be a part of it and to do my small part with the presence that I have out there. But Chris, how does anybody reach out to find out more about the policy forum or any other events you guys got going on? Yeah,
you find us online, www.tinet.org. Everything in terms of the policy forum and all of our issue areas, everything's on there. I'll leave you with this, Chris. So about 2 years ago, true story. So we were doing our flying, we were walking around Capitol Hill, and literally as we were exiting some of our meetings, the trial lawyers were literally going into the meeting. There's an association, obviously, the American Association of Justice. They were coming into the meetings as we were leaving. So it's literally like, I'd say it's a revolving door of different sides of each argument coming in and having conversations. So got to be at the table or you're on the menu, as they say.
Yeah. You're very accurate there. I love it. Well, yeah, let's do it, you guys. Let's band together as an industry and let's go make our voice be heard out there. But that's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank that show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the bag. Hey, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane move.